The tidings that the world-honored one had attained enlightenment spread throughout the countries of India. The one who rejoiced most over this news was his father, King Śākyamuni. When he received reports that the prince had perished during his 6 years of ascetic practice, he had not believed them. Now that the world-honored one had attained enlightenment and had become a Buddha, the king wished to meet him on the earliest possible day. The king's messengers, one after another, traveled south. But not one came back. They all sought refuge in the teaching of the world-honored one and exerted themselves in the practice of the path. They forgot their tasks as messengers. There was no one left to convey his father's inconsolable heart to the world-honored one. As a last resort, King Śākyamuni enlisted the aid of Kuludayan and dispatched him southward, about 500 miles to Rajagraha. Kuludayan was born in the same year as the world-honored one and was his childhood friend. He answered the king,
"If you will allow me to become a mendicant, I shall carry out my duties as a messenger."
The king acceded to this wish but fervently ordered Kuludayan to have the world-honored one return to Kapilavastu. Kuludayan went before the world-honored one and listened to the teaching. He became a mendicant and attained enlightenment. On the day of the full moon in the last month of the year, he went before the world-honored one and attempted with a song to persuade the world-honored one to return home.
World-honored one, the trees are now dyed with crimson. Their fruits have ripened. Withered leaves have fallen off, and they blaze forth like flames. It is neither too hot nor too cold. It is a time for traveling, a most pleasant season, so that your countrymen can gaze upon the world-honored one, journey westward and cross the river Rohini. Fields are plowed in hope, seeds are sown in hope, traders set sail in hope of finding treasures. May the hope that I have come to pass.
The world-honored one heard this song and perceived that the moment to instruct his family had arrived. Accompanied by a large number of disciples, he headed for his native home, about 500 miles in a northerly direction. The world-honored one traveled at a pace covering about 10 miles each day. Kuludayan flew through the sky and arrived at the place where King Śākyamuni was to report on the journey of the world-honored one. At Kapilavastu, the people of the Shakya clan were busy with preparations for the return of the world-honored one. First of all, they cleansed Nagrata tree park and invited the world-honored one and his disciples there. From the beginning, the Shakya clan was traditionally a proud people, and this resulted in a number of problems. On this occasion, when the world-honored one took his seat, the elders of the clan, seized by their inbred pride, refused to bow down to the world-honored one. They said,
"Gautama is younger than we are, therefore, we need not bow down to him. The younger ones should step forward and bow down to him. We shall stay behind."
The world-honored one perceived their feelings, and in order to crush their prideful minds he ascended into the sky and manifested a divine transformation. King Śākyamuni saw this miracle and bowed down at the feet of the world-honored one. Then the other members of the Shakya clan also bowed down reverently at the world-honored one's feet. Thereupon, the world-honored one descended from the sky and took his seat. Surrounded by his kinsmen, he recounted the Vishvantara Jātaka. Long ago, King Sibi reigned in the city of Jātaka in the country of Sibi. The king had a prince named Sanjaya. When the prince came of age, they had him take the daughter of King Madra, Pusati, as his consort and handed the kingdom over to him. Pusati became a favorite of the great King Sanjaya. Among all the consorts, she became the foremost. At that time, the god Indra thought,
"With this, I have been able to realize 9 out of the 10 aspirations that I promised in Pusta's former life to fulfill. This time I shall fulfill the promise of a child."
In the Trayastrimsha heaven, Indra approached a bodhisattva whose life in the Kaustile world was drawing to a close and urged him to descend to the world of people and dwell in the womb of King Sanjaya's consort Pusati. At the time of her pregnancy, the queen felt a powerful urge to give freely. She established 6 locations in order to do this. They were situated at the 4 gates of the city, the center of the city, and the gate of the rear palace. Every day she aspired to give away 600,000 coins. A diviner said,
"A bodhisattva who is unflagging in his devotion to selfless giving has entered your womb."
The great king was overjoyed and, following his consort's wishes, practiced giving magnanimously. In the 10th month, the queen received permission from the great king and had her carriage driven to the middle of the city. When they arrived at the area populated by people of the common class, she suddenly experienced labor pains. Entering a hut hastily constructed for the purpose, she gave birth to a bodhisattva. Since he was born in the quarters of the common class, he was named Vishvantara. As soon as the prince was born, He asked his mother's permission to distribute freely a bag of 1,000 coins. After that, he found joy in giving away his possessions to all beings. But when he was 8, he leaned on a chair and thought,
Everything that I give away originally came to me from some other source. I am not fulfilled by such giving. I must give away something that is mine. If someone wants my heart, I shall take it out and offer it to him. If someone desires my eyes, I shall give him my eyes. If someone desires my flesh, I shall tear out my flesh and offer it to him.
Then the great earth trembled, mountains swayed, and auspicious omens appeared in the sky and the ocean. The gods sang the praises of his aspirations. When he was 16 years of age, Vishvantara mastered the various arts and took as his consort Madi, a princess of the family of King Madra. He rose to the rank of crown prince, and each day he gave away 600,000 coins. Soon after that, a prince was born to them. They named him Jali. Then a princess named Kanhajali was born. Vishvantara rode atop a white elephant named Pakaya, who was born at the same time as he. Each day he made the rounds of the 6 large areas set aside for the practice of giving. This white elephant possessed a mysterious power. He was able to cause rain to fall at will on grounds that had been imprinted with his footsteps. Now at that time, in the country of Kalinga, there was a long period of drought, which was followed by a famine. The people were plagued by both hunger and thieves. Overcome with suffering, they rushed to the royal palace and vented their anger at the king. The king, on the strength of the power of his merits, by his observance of the precepts, and by his selfless giving, attempted to make it rain, but he was unable to do so. At the urging of the people, the king dispatched Brahmins to ask Vishvantara for the use of his white elephant. The Brahmins who received the king's orders purposefully covered themselves with dust and smeared mud over their bodies. After a long journey, they entered the city of Jātaka. On the day of the full moon, they spied the prince at the south gate of the city and besieged him to give over to them the elephant that was the glorious Trisura of the country of Sibi, the elephant that had the power to save the world. The prince thought,
I aspire to offer even my own self. It is an easy matter to offer something other than myself.
He immediately dismounted from the back of the white elephant and offered it, together with countless precious objects, to the Brahmins. The shock and rage of the city's people when they learned of this gift was extraordinary. They shouted, "We shall be ruined! We shall be ruined!" and berated the prince. The Brahmins who were riding on the elephant escaped the city with great difficulty. Anger now turned into a riot, and there was no way the people could be pacified. The desperation of the people finally moved the king. This resulted in the banishment of the prince to Mount Vanka. The prince, however, rejoiced inwardly because he had performed an act of giving that was difficult to perform. He did not brood over the banishment, and the following morning he intended to take leave of Princess Madi and go deep into the Himalaya mountains. But the princess objected to the separation and sang the following verse.
The luxuriant foliage of the forest will prosper because of the presence of our children and ring with the sound of pure voices lifted in song. The deer will roam together, the peacocks dance, elephants will move in herds through the forest to bloom with flowers, and kinnaras sing along with the murmuring sounds of fresh waters. Although I abandon the city, the place where the children will be my home. Deep in the mountains, I shall be with you.
Vishvantara acceded to the princess's wish to accompany him. He said farewell to his parents. On a carriage drawn by 4 horses, he took along their 2 children, and pointing to the mountain paths he set out on the journey. On the road, a Brahmin asked for his horses and carriage, and the prince gave them to him. He had the princess take the hand of their daughter, and he himself carried his son on his back. Hurrying along, they reached Mount Vanka. The mountain was filled with poisonous snakes and wild beasts, but they were all won over by the prince's virtues and lived together in harmony. The prince's household spent 7 peaceful months in this manner. Around that time, there was in the country of Kalinga a Brahmin village called Dhanavitha, and there lived a Brahmin there called Jūtaka. Jūtaka was asked by his wife to purchase a maidservant, and he attempted to do so, but he did not have enough money. Thereupon, he attempted to take advantage of Vishvantara's charitable spirit. He made a long journey and climbed up Mount Vanka. Spying the prince's consort setting out to gather the fruits of trees, he went before the prince and said,
Like the waters of that great river that fulfills the desires of those who are parched, I believe that the honored one will, without fail, hand over his 2 children to me.
The prince held down his 2 children, who were attempting to run away and hide, and gave them over to the Brahmin.
Jali, Kanha, please do not hide. Go down the mountain with this Brahmin and become his servants. Become the vessels that let me cross the ocean of birth and death. Oh, my children are dear to me. However, enlightenment surpasses my love for my children 10 trillion times over.
With these words, the prince gazed after his children, who were cruelly bound with wisteria vines and were being taken away into the distance. The Brahmin hurried the children along by whipping them over and over. Their skin was torn, blood flowed, and time after time, they both staggered under the blows. By chance, the Brahmin stumbled over a rock and fell down. As soon as the bonds loosened around the soft bodies of the two children, they ran back to the prince, crying deliriously. They wrapped their arms around the prince's legs and begged him not to let them be led away. The prince did not utter one word. The children pleaded,
Father, we do not fear death. That is the fate of all beings. Rather we fear for Mother. Mother will cry forever and ever. With our loss she will suffer deep sadness, and her tears will flow forever, like a river.
The Brahmin viewed this scene. Then heartlessly and violently he dragged the children away and marched them off. The children said,
Father, take good care of yourself. All of our possessions, cows, elephants, horses, are all left to Mother. May they alleviate Mother's grief.
Wailing and crying out, the two children were dragged away. The prince's heart became hot and his whole body shook. Unable to bear it, the prince went into his hut and cried, shedding copious tears. Standing up, he took hold of his sword and pursued the Brahmin with the thought of killing him. But in a moment the prince's wisdom restrained his emotions. The Brahmin encountered great difficulties trying to drive the two children down the mountain. Jali escaped his bonds and returned to his father. When the Brahmin dragged Jali away again, Kanya, staggering, ran back and threw herself at the prince's feet. She cried out,
Father, please, please, Father, please save me.
The prince's mind wavered, and he wept tears of blood. He thought,
This suffering is the result of the thirst of lust. I must abandon lust and attain the mind of detachment.
With the light of wisdom, the prince endured painful gasping and sat quietly in meditation. His consort Madi had gone deep into the mountains to gather the fruits of trees. She dug for tree roots and returned to the shack at dusk, but she was unable to find her children. She thought of the fearful dream that she had had the night before and, like a crazed woman, ran around in search of her children. The prince remained silent and told her nothing. She searched and searched in a frenzy and at dawn returned to the shack. Thereupon she swooned and lost consciousness, but with the prince's ministrations she revived. This great and heart-rending practice of selfless giving astonished Indra. Indra, in order to test the resolve of the prince, assumed the form of a Brahmin and asked for his consort. The prince could not possibly answer.
Yesterday I gave away my 2 children. How can I now give away my consort?
Rather, without a trace of attachment, and as if he were tossing out a bundle of 1,000 coins, he picked up a jar, poured water on the Brahmin's hands, and handed over his consort to him. And she gracefully did the prince's bidding and went with him. This was all done for the sake of perfecting the path. Indra was moved by the prince's resolve and his consort's fidelity, and he manifested himself in his true form as a god and returned her to the prince. The Brahmin who had with him the 2 children Jali and Kanha intended to go to Kalinga, but drawn by this god he went instead to the city of Jātaka. The 2 children went to their grandfather. Both the prince and his consort returned home and were received by then country. A large gathering to celebrate Vishvantara's selfless giving was held. The people of the Shakya clan heard this story and were overjoyed as they departed the forest to return home. But not one invited the world-honored one to share a meal with them the following day.